My name is Kim Brown. I'm a training specialist here at the U.S. Census Bureau. I want to thank you for joining us today. First, I'd like to introduce some housekeeping rules before we introduce our speaker. As mentioned earlier, this webinar is being recorded. For your convenience, it will be posted to the Census Academy site within 30 business days. We'll post all supplemental materials, including the PowerPoint slides. In terms of how to ask questions during the webinar, you can submit your written questions using the Q&A panel, which is at the bottom center or on the right side of your WebEx screen. Please take a moment to locate that now. Once you found the Q&A panel, make sure you choose all panelists from the drop-down menu. This will ensure we see your question. Don't send your question to an individual panelist. Also, we ask that you do not include any personal or business identifiable information with your questions. Now, let's talk about the chat panel. Look for that on your screen now. It's probably right next to the Q&A panel. Definitely keep that chat panel open also, because this is where we will provide key links and other resources. Keep in mind, you won't be able to respond to the chat. Chat is just for us to send you links and other resources. In the chat box, we will be sharing throughout the webinar the link for the evaluation. We are very interested in hearing from you how we're doing. My colleagues, Logan Powell, Alexandra Barker, and Amy Lowe will be monitoring the Q&A panel. As time allows, we will answer your question directly through the Q&A panel, or we will share your question with the presenter to respond to after the presentation. If we don't get to all questions with the response during the webinar, we will post the questions and responses with the webinar materials within 30 business days. Lastly, near the end of the webinar, I just want to remind you that we will be sharing that evaluation link because we are interested in hearing from you on how successful our training is. As you know, we're in a virtual environment and sometimes technical difficulties may occur. If you have any issues, try a different browser, such as Chrome, or consider logging out and coming back into the session. If you are having audio issues, try selecting the computer audio or calling into the webinar via phone. Now, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Mary Lissenring. Thanks again for being here. Mary, you may begin.
Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here with you today. I want to thank you for coming and the tool and learning how to use the tool. My name is Mary Lissenring. I help to lead the program, Census Academy. This program focuses on digital education product development that teaches how to find and use Census Bureau data. I'm a co-founder of the Census Survey Explorer, and I manage this project and the tool. And so, without further ado, let us begin. I apologize for the dog barking. I put him away, but someone won't stop knocking at my door as soon as this started, of course. I'm sorry. All right, so I want to tell you a little bit about the Data Dissemination and Training Branch. The Data Dissemination and Training Branch, we can bring our data experts to you, and you can request a free training for your organization by using a link on Census Academy's website. On Census Academy, we have data gems, which are short how-to videos, and we also have courses, which are video tutorials where you can learn at your own pace. Then we also have our webinars, which you found this webinar today, but we have previously recorded webinars and our future webinars as well. On census.gov/academy, you can find all of this. And then we also have contact information for our Ask Data line, where you can ask your questions to our data experts. So, the objectives for today. our overall goal is to introduce you to Census Survey Explorer and show you how to use it. We will share a brief background on the development of the tool, simply because knowing where we came from and understanding where we were as compared to where we are now will help you gain a greater appreciation for the tool and understanding of what it can do for you. This tool most certainly filled a need, and it can help you save time in your research. It's a very practical tool. We will then demonstrate the tool, and then I will also share some troubleshooting possibilities while I'm demonstrating the tool. The good news is that this tool is designed to be really easy to use, but we're going to share some common situations and roadblocks that you may come across. After that, we'll give you a chance to start using the tool with just 1 or 2 short hands-on exercises. And last, hopefully we'll have time to answer some questions. And as a surprise, we have Logan Powell and Amy Lowe with us. Logan is the Developer Experience Lead for the Census Bureau, and Amy Lowe is our very accomplished Civic Digital Fellow who dreamt up this tool and designed it for us. They can answer some questions for you about the back end of the tool and how it works and user experience design. If you're curious about that, or agile methodology that we use to develop the tool, please feel free to ask those sorts of questions as well as questions about the tool itself. All right. So a little bit about the background of how this tool originated before we dive in. The tool was conceptualized when a colleague and I discussed the best way to teach data seekers what topics were available across our many surveys. We have over 100 topics and over 120 surveys, and so topics can overlap from one survey to another survey. For example, let's think about the data topic employment. Many economic surveys have employment data, which could be referencing the context of characteristics of employer businesses, business owners, payroll, or more. And then if we look at the demographic survey, such as the current population survey, there's employment data that could be referenced in terms of who's employed in a household or household income. So shown here on this slide, we have a graphic where there's some overlapping topics in just 2 surveys, the American Community Survey and the Decennial Census. So you can see in the teal column, there's demographic information such as age, race, and sex, but also in the burgundy bottom strip color, you see age, race, and sex as well. So that's just another example of how topics overlap. Oops, I went too far. There we go. So as you can imagine, when we add more layers of information across 120 surveys and lots of topics, and we add the next layer, which would be geography, the task of displaying this information is even more intense. So for every survey, we have multiple topics, more than one geography potentially, it's 1 or more. We have the count, so a geography would be a county or a state, right? And then we need to also visualize the frequency of the data release. So is the data released on a monthly basis or annual basis? And then lastly, we also, in the tool, included the date of release. So how far back that survey goes, because if you're looking for a certain survey or data, for a reference year such as 1950, but the survey didn't start until 1960, that's handy information to know, and we wanted to make sure that that information was at your fingertips as well. So what we needed to do is fix a few issues. All right. So after we realized that it was just really too complex to expect learners to memorize that volume of information, we also acknowledged that the path to researching what topics, geographies, frequency of data releases for each survey, that pathway was long and kind of arduous. So before Census Survey Explorer, data users and researchers had a few options to conduct their research. They had the surveys and programs list page, which lists each of our surveys. We also have another page called our topics page. So you could select a topic like employment, and it would take you to a bunch of information about employment and data about employment, or you could use the search bar within census.gov. Each of these options required multiple clicks to find the information that we're talking about here. So it kind of would send you down a rabbit hole to have to click on, and sometimes you would even have to download a table to see some of the topics in a survey. So a summary of what we realized about the available methods was that there was no quick or comprehensive way to look up information. We needed to convey information for several pages of censuses and surveys, that the survey names and descriptions that you see before you click into the survey and open it up, the descriptions characters are limited. So a little bit about what that survey is. You've got the name and just one or two sentences to kind of try and guess what's in there. And that the user experience required several clicks to discover the topic's geographies and frequencies for each survey. And the mastery of this topic was just too much to expect from you or the average learner or researcher, that we really needed to provide a resource more than memorization. And then there's topic overlap across some surveys, which adds some confusion, and that a static infographic just wasn't really cutting it. Okay, so here's what Census Survey Explorer can offer you now. This is where we're at now. You now have a tool that helps you to narrow down the choices of what surveys to research in a really time-efficient way. Researchers can use the drop-down filter menus to select criteria to help you find what you're looking for. Or you can use the tool in a more exploratory way to explore what we have. So say you don't really have that much of a goal in mind, this is a great tool actually to kind of learn what kind of data we even have. So the video playing in the background demonstrates using drop-down menus in the tool to select criteria such as topics and geographies. Once you select your criteria, you have a full and complete baseline of surveys that is just filtered as your result to select from, and then you can do a deeper dive into those surveys that met your criteria. The master information is available at a glance now, and now that we have the key survey information and the full descriptions in view versus just a description that was only that sentence or two, the searchability when you use the search bar is also vastly improved. And one of my favorite unexpected consequences is that you may even find a lesser known survey that has a topic you might be looking for in a context that you weren't thinking of yet. For example, if you searched for crimes, you wanted statistics on crime, right? You might not think of juvenile crime, but when you search the topic of crime, you would see that some surveys pulled up with that revolved around juvenile crime. So that it might be a bit of a smaller survey that you never had heard of before, and perhaps now you want to expand your inquiry. So I love that it's equitable to all the surveys, this tool. Okay. All righty, so I want you to go ahead and open up the tool and just interact with me a little bit, and our moderators for the Q&A in the chat. If you go to www.census.gov/Survey Explorer, and you use the last drop down on the right-hand side that says subtopics, go ahead and find a topic that you just didn't even know we had, and go ahead and let the audience, know and share, that something fun that you might have found in the topics. And I'll just give like a few seconds for that. Okay, so e-commerce, I see. Firm size, yep. How big a firm, yep. So yeah, there's definitely some interesting fertility, right? Yep, year moved in. So yeah, we have some interest, wildlife, yes. So what is the website? Oh, Kim, will you mind sharing the survey link? It's census.gov/survey explorer is how you can get there. Childcare is another one. Yeah, thanks for participating with that. I'm glad that you had a chance to discover something new already. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to cover about the development process is to mention that we had the gift of having enough time before our developer, our Civic Digital Fellow, was an intern, right, for about a year. And so before she left, she was able to help us conduct some user experience feedback. And we collected feedback from internal, so census employees, and external, non-census employee stakeholders. And we were also able to involve experts, so people who knew quite a bit about census data, and people who knew zero, like they'd never even tried to use the Census Bureau to find data before, to test the tool and help us uncover any additional enhancements that we could potentially make or clarifications that we can make. And I just like to think that we made some really good enhancements from that feedback, and that we co-designed the tool with our end users feedback and with them in mind. So this tool is definitely for you, and we do like to hear your feedback. We are always considering what 2.0 might look like in the future. We believe in evolving, you know, as time goes on. So I hope that you all enjoy using it. So now we're going to go ahead and just dive into the tool. So I have to change screens here, so give me 1 second. Takes time to get this. There we go. All right. Okay, here we are. So again, census.gov/survey explorer is the URL you can type in. And the first thing that we should mention is the search bar. It can be helpful. I actually find it most helpful when I know the name of the survey that I'm looking for. It's just really great to be able to pull up that survey and you instantly get the metadata. Is sort of the fancy word we like to say. So it's the content, what's in the survey, right, is the metadata. So we get a description of the survey, and some descriptions are a little long. You just have to click on this more button, and you instantly get all of this critical information. So say you knew what you wanted survey-wise. I find that is a great way, just my go-to way whenever I need to know something about a survey and I know which survey I'm looking for. You can use the search bar in combination with the drop-down menus, but it doesn't work like a Google search bar, search engine search bar. It will only pull words that it finds within this page itself. So you can't ask a question. And another big thing that people try to do is they try to search for like it's a data tool. And so this is not a data tool in that it's going to provide you data like how many people live in Maryland, right? So you can't really ask a statistic question like that. It's more a step before that, like you're looking into which surveys are the appropriate surveys for you that have the topics you're interested in and the geographies you're interested in. Once you find that survey, then you want to go into the survey and go onward to find the data. So that's an important clarification to make about the tool. So here we have our drop-down menus. I like using the drop-down menus to find, new information, but I love them because they inherently teach you how you should be framing your data question, meaning that they get you to think about which of these drop-downs, geographies or frequencies, et cetera, matter the most to you in your data question. So some may matter more than others to you, and you may even have to make a decision about what to prioritize if you conduct a search using these dropdowns and say you got no results, right? You might have to decide, okay, I'm going to deprioritize one of these dropdowns over another. So for example, if I go into geographies, and I click on zip code, so that pulls up all the surveys that are offered at the zip code level. And then I'm going to pull up under the frequencies dropdown. I'm going to go ahead and select monthly. And under topics, I'm going to select economic data. And under subtopics, I'm going to select business. So if I scroll down, I've created a scenario I just described where nothing showed up for me, but I'm going to go ahead and go to frequencies, and I'm going to uncheck monthly because I think annual is fine for me this time. Like the timeliness of the data, I want it relatively timely, but monthly isn't necessary. So I'm going to deprioritize that frequency. And now I have 3 surveys that I can go into and explore. All right, so you can reset your search just by clicking on the reset search button, and it takes all those selections that you made. You may notice that every time you made a selection, it showed up right here for you so that you can see what your selections are. But whatever survey you want to pick, when you click on the survey, it opens up a new window for you, so you don't have to, go back to the old window, and you can go ahead and just dive into that survey where you're going to find out about the survey. If you click on data, it'll take you to where you can find the data. You can do a deeper dive into it, but we didn't lose our tool page. Here we're still here. So let's go ahead and click on, well, I want to show you one other thing here on the tool. So you might have noticed when I opened up these drop downs that there's a category called other. And so right here, and then under frequencies, there's also an other. That other doesn't list underneath of topics or subtopics, just geographies and frequencies. And so what is that? What does that mean, right? All it is that we selected the most frequently utilized or popular geographies and frequencies, because if we put in every single geography, this drop down would be very long. And so we decided to keep it a little bit smaller, but it's still functioning for all of the other geographies. So if you go to this tab up here labeled geographies, here we have a description for you of each of our geographies in case you were curious what a metropolitan area was, for example. So if you scroll down to other, here there's a list and a description for all of the geographies that fall under the other category. So if you don't see the geography you're looking for, say you wanted to look up school districts, then just select other, and then that'll get you to start filtering those surveys down. And it's the same for frequencies, where we gave a brief description of or definition of these frequencies, and then also listed the frequencies such as biennial or biannual under there. So those are much less used frequencies. Now I want to take you to the topics page. All right, topics and subtopics. So this is a great page and a resource that you should consider using. And one is, I do give an example here of one of the biggest questions that came out of our data user research was, why should I pick topic first or subtopic first? So it was a little bit confusing. So we did give some guidance here. So if you're welcome to come into the topics page and check that out. It doesn't really matter what direction you go in. It's just a matter of, do you want to see an overview of economic topic surveys first and then whittle it down? or do you want to do the vice versa? Do you want to see only business surveys, and then, you know, select your main topics such as economics? So it just, you'll pull up the exact same number of surveys if you use the exact same selections, but it just maps. It just, all you want to see is you know, an overview of what pulls up first. Okay, so then if we come down here, there's some helpful hints. Some surveys contain, you know, more than one topic. Somebody might have been confused about that. So we wanted to give some helpful tips here. And then for me, the most useful part is these are all the top subtopics listed underneath of a main topic. So there are some places where a subtopic will overlap. It'll be located in a main topic. And so this is helpful to understand that. Another reason why this is helpful is you may be using nomenclature or terminology that's a little bit different than what's in the tool. And so this will help you look up the appropriate checkbox or term to search for. And so we thought this would be a helpful resource to you. I'm going to go ahead and steal an example from our data gem that Census Academy made on the Census Survey Explorer. So I'm going to go back to the tool. So say you wanted to find data on American Indians. All right, so we are not pulling, I think, Indian. Indian pulls up when you add the S. So that's another thing to try, taking or adding off an S. So I know that we have more data on this demographic, but there's just one survey pulling up. So I want to troubleshoot this for you. So this is where we would go into the topics and subtopics. And we're going to go ahead and scroll down. And I know that, you know, that's sort of in the demographic nature, right? And so when we come down here, you see American Indian, Alaska Native, Black African. So all the race categories are just simply under race. So I should have gone into the tool and I should have searched race, right? So I'm going to go back into the subtopics, and you do have a little search bar within these drop downs too, so you don't have to scroll and you can just type and pull up what you're looking for. So that sometimes helps faster to do it that way. And so now I know I have race. So that's an example of how you might be using the subtopics and topics guidance page. Next, I'm going to say I know that I don't want to have data for the nation. So I just really want to look at tribal areas. So I'm going to go to geographies and see if that's there. And yep, here we go. There's a checkbox next to the tribal areas. I can just easily select that. But if it wasn't here, I would have selected other. And then I want to know economic data on these tribal areas. Okay, so we've got 2 surveys that pulled up. So that's a really great start for my research. Now, I'm just going to take you real quickly to the help page, which has some frequently asked questions. So I highly recommend that you come to this page. These questions, a lot of them were derived from our user experience research. So we know other people have had this question, and we try to answer them for you. And as we get more questions about this tool, we may add to this and let this page evolve. There's also a link to that data gem I mentioned here on the help page as well. All right, so next I want to go back to the presentation, and I'm going to go ahead and involve you all in the presentation now. So it's time to just try this tool out. I'm going to give you a couple of quick little exercises to do. So if you haven't gone to the tool yet, go ahead and go. Bookmark the tool so you don't forget about it in your favorite browser. So how would you find what surveys have data on the education level of residents in your county? What would you check off and how many surveys populate? So go ahead and just give that question a try. Your data question is, what surveys have data on education level of residents in my county? I'll just give a couple more seconds. Maybe somebody who's participating can throw in if they did a count of how many surveys populated, let us know. Okay, yep, thanks, Elena. So Elena got it. We checked education under the subtopics menu, and then we checked county in the geography menu, and 7 surveys populated. So a couple more correct answers. And then I have just one more. It's a pretty easy tool to use, so hopefully it won't take anyone too long to come up with the answers. Find which surveys have economic data for veterans as well as by race. So what would you check? How many surveys populate for that data question? What surveys have economic data for veterans as well as race? Okay, just a couple more seconds here. If you have the answer, go ahead and share it. Okay, so you should have checked economic from the topics menu and then checked veterans and then race in the subtopics menu. And I counted 8 surveys at the time that I designed this question. Sometimes the survey numbers will change as we add more topics to surveys or a survey gets added. So these numbers won't stay consistent if you come back and watch this webinar later on the recording. Sometimes the answers could change as we add surveys. Okay, so a couple more plugs just for our resources. Kim, if you don't mind, can you throw up the link to the data gem in this in the chat for everyone? This data gem is a 7-minute data gem. We would love if you shared it with your social media. We also started putting badges on our data gems and some suggested text. So help us promote this tool. We want to make sure that it gets out there and it gets used, and that people understand it's so much easier now to look up what surveys have the information you need. And so we always love getting your help on getting that word out. So share the data gem on your channels, and there's some text that you can just cut and paste. If you completed the data gem, you can click on this little badge and download it, and then post the badge so you can advertise to your peers that you now have this new skill about learning, that you've learned how to use Census Survey Explorer. And so all of our new data gems going forward should have this badge, and we have certificates too with our courses. So please go ahead and watch that data gem or share it with others. And then also don't forget about our Ask Data line. And so now we can move into any questions that you have for our panel. But I'm going to recap real quick today that, today what you've learned is Census Survey Explorer can help you in your research process, enabling a streamlined process to get a baseline of surveys to look at further, that you've learned what information is available for each survey through this tool, and you've learned how to use the tool and how to troubleshoot a couple of common mistakes, and what resources are available for you if you have further questions. And so without further ado, I'll go ahead and take a look at the Q&A here, and Amy and Logan can join in and we will answer questions as they come. Any chat Q&A moderators, also I appreciate any help if you saw any particularly good questions that we should make sure we get to. Okay, a variable level tool. So a variable level tool would be more like a data tool, right? I think that would probably be something more or something like that, Barbara. So Alexandra, you could weigh in too on that question. Is there a way you can demonstrate opening one of the surveys and accessing the data? Let me come back to that one, and then maybe we'll go give that a try at the end. Yep. Go ahead.
Yeah, so can I speak about Airtable?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Amy, do you want to take the Amani Barnett question? How is the data stored?
Yeah, I can answer that question. So the data is stored inside of like our database, which is hosted on a tool called Airtable. And we received all of the survey data and information from a combination of our data experts at the census who helped us compile the information to show on this website.
We also had a question about how people could add surveys. Do we have a link to that for people inside the Bureau, or is that accessible to anybody? Mary?
Can you repeat that, Logan, one more time?
So we have a question about how people could suggest surveys to be added to the Explorer.
I would email the Ask Data line, or I'm going to show my contact information at the end of the slideshow here, so you can email me directly as well if there's a missing survey. I do know that we are working with several program areas on adding some new surveys. So it definitely can be done, and we review the tool on a regular basis to make sure that we're adding new content that needs to be added. I'm trying to read through questions, and Amy and Logan, please feel free to, if you see one, it's helpful if you re-ask your question and keep it at the bottom fresh for us too.
Yeah, I see a question from Linda who asks, I can't see where to select a topic, and when I click on topics and subtopics, it gives me a help document. So if you go to the home page of the Survey Explorer tool, and then go to the drop down for topics and subtopics, that's where you should be able to select the pages for the geographies, frequency, topics, and subtopics are more so designed as additional information for you to learn more about each topic.
So Yvonne White-Morey, you have a question here about the search did not reset between the examples. You would probably have to just go back into the search bar and then clear out the search and type in the next search query.
The search bar is definitely picky about the language you use, and so again, like if you use an S at the end of a word, you might want to take that off. Again, I prefer to use the drop downs over the search bar. The search bar, I think, is more handy when you know exactly what you're looking for.
We have a couple of questions in here about what level of access and data availability and so on. Just to be clear, the Survey Explorer is really just to get you started on your path to figuring out what data are available. So you would type in themes, topics, particular topics of interest, categories like, for example, poverty or transportation, or those types of things are what you're going to find most easily through the Census Survey Explorer. The Survey Explorer is really just the kind of first step, and then once you've found sort of a subset of surveys from, there are 100 plus surveys in there. Once you found a subset that you're interested in, you usually use data.census.gov, which is our kind of our American Fact Finder replacement tool. You dive deeper into the data that are available via that tool. So that's data.census.gov.
I see a question, how do you look for data available by block group from Brandy, geographies? So you would select other. If you're not seeing the geography, just select the other, and blocks are in there and tracks. And another person asked, if you go to census.gov, is there a direct link? And so, yeah, you would go, let me see if I can even just demonstrate it for you. Let me see how I can get out of the PowerPoint here for you. So if we go, you're gonna go, come on. Just trying to get a web page to pull up here for us. There we go. If you go to census.gov, to me, the easiest pathway is you go to surveys and programs, and the tab across the top here, and you go to all surveys and programs. And so this is the list of all of our surveys that the tool is based on. On the left here, there's a link to Census Survey Explorer, and there's also a link on the right-hand side. So we have a link on the left and the right of the list of all of our surveys and programs. That's the easiest way to get to the tool. It's also under Data Tools and Apps. So if you go to Explore Data and you go to Data Tools and Apps, and you scroll down, it's alphabetical to Census Survey Explorer, it's right here. So that's how you can get there from our homepage. Thanks for that question.
Yeah, Mary, do you think you could do one more demo of using the topics and subtopics questions, since we're getting another question about how to use the topics drop down on the search bar?
Okay. Yeah, sure. So if I go to, is there a particular topic you're interested in?
So James Cox, no, the search bar is actually just, as James Cox asked, does the search bar accept Boolean or wildcard searches? That's, no, it's basically it's a regex key character search, so it can begin or contain the text that you type in.
Okay.
So
if we wanted to select childcare, for example, we only get one survey to populate, so let's get a different one than that, so we can show a little bit more than that. Let's go to children. All right, so we're going to populate all the surveys with children. And here I'm selecting a subtopic first because I'm curious. I'm going to go and scroll through. There's quite a bit. So I've decided, you know what, I want to narrow that down more, but I did just want to take a quick look at what was available. But I only want demographic information on children. Like I don't, so I'm going to select demographic. And then I scroll down, and it's still going to be a healthy number of surveys, but I've eliminated a couple. You could also say you wanted to only know about like housing data on children, so you could switch, like, because that even narrows it a little bit more down to just 6 instead of, I think before it was like 4 rows. So that's how you just use them interchangeably to narrow down. But like if I selected housing first and then I select children after that, then I have the same number of 6 surveys. So the order doesn't matter. You're going to get the same data pull up for you, or surveys, I should say, pull up for you. It's just a matter of what you want to look at first and how fast you want to narrow it down. If you're like super confident, I know I only want housing and I know I only want children, then just go for it. But if you wanted to take a little cursory review of all housing surveys first before you whittled it down to children, it just gives you flexibility. It's not meant to be confusing. It's just meant to give you flexibility in how you use and view the surveys. Okay. Alrighty. Any other good questions in here, Logan and Amy, that you can help? Are you scrolling through for us?
There are a lot, and they're streaming through. We're trying to get some of them on chat directly while you're speaking.
Thank you.
So one person mentioned that the site didn't work without HTTPS.
Okay.
So that very well could be the case because we use secure transport protocol for all of our websites or all of our pages on our website.
Right. We did have a. Oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to reiterate one more time that the Survey Explorer is really just a first step. I think that to reiterate what Mary had said initially, what we are and what Amy really isolated as a very salient problem for people who are not familiar with the census products is that many people don't even know that we have all these surveys. They think that we do a survey once every 10 years, but we really do them on an ongoing basis and have 100+ surveys. So it's a place for people who are not at all familiar with census to discover what kind of surveys we run. And then you would go to data.census.gov, which is a way to actually unpack the survey that you're interested in, really dig in deeper to find out like specific, demographics that you're interested in, businesses that you may be interested in, health issues or health care statistics. There's just too many to mention. Each of these surveys can contain hundreds or tens of thousands of variables, for example, and the ACS has 10,000 different ways that you can look at the data. So it's just a starting point, and you're recommended to use this as a kind of for people who are unfamiliar with census to get started.
Someone asked, can you share a case when the search bar is what you would prefer? I did mention using a survey name as a use case, but say you wanted to look for, let me set the search first. Say you wanted to look for, you wanted data in Puerto Rico. So you could potentially use the search bar, and that will pull up all the surveys that have the word Puerto Rico in that in the descriptions or the metadata. And then what I would do is then say I want to whittle it down to I want information on children. And so I would select that, and then now I have one survey actually that pulls up that has data on Puerto Rico that has the subtopic of children. So that could be how you use it in a more deliberate way. I'm scrolling through questions still, trying to get to as many as I possibly can that haven't been answered yet by the chat moderators. Thank you for working so hard, chat moderators.
There was a question here about an API. We don't have an API that's publicly available for this particular tool, at least not yet. If that's something that a lot of people would like, then maybe we could consider that. But we do have an API for our general data, like all of our data, and that's api.census.gov /data. And you can say /data.html. I can't find the actual question at the moment. There's so many to dig through here, but I do recall seeing that. You can also go to census.gov /developers, and that's a good place to get started with our APIs.
Logan, there's a question that says, can you select data that's only as shapefiles? I'm not quite sure. So data that's available by shapefile, is that what they're asking?
Yeah, so any census geography, we have shapefiles available for those geographies. So you can actually go to TigerWeb. I can't find that. Where is the question? I can just give them a link.
It was at 1:38 p.m.
Oh, it's way back. Okay. I'll dig that up and I'll send them some links.
All right. I can't see where to select a topic. When I click on the topics and subtopics, it gives me a help document, but not a link to see that list. I'm not quite sure. Linda, if you're still here, maybe if you contact me or the Ask Data line, we can help you with that. I'm not sure why you're not seeing the list of topics on the web page. So I will say This tool is in its beta form, and so if there's any bugs that occur, you know, we are addressing those. It's but it has been released as a beta tool, so we're still looking at it, making improvements. But we actually did have our first bug actually happen this week, but we think we've resolved that. So, but if there are some bugs still, please let us know through the Ask Data line, and we'll record those and work on that with our developer. Okay. I tried to search for Indiana. So this is a common troubleshooting or error. It's not meant, we don't have state. So if you're looking for data on a state level, you need to go into geography and you select state. And then those are the surveys available by state. So you know, if you want to filter it down by more topics or frequencies, that's fine. But to get to the actual data for your state, you would need to go into that survey and find out what tools have data for that survey and go into that tool. So you're not going to find anything pull up when you type in your state. You have to select the state geography to see what surveys are available at the state level. So that's sort of not the purpose of the tool to find that specific data. You're looking to see what your options are.
I got a question here from Margaret. I got a question here from Margaret.
Sure, go ahead.
Oh, somebody else speaking? I'm sorry.
Someone said just to confirm, when typing a search term, are multiple words treated as a phrase? Logan or Amy, can you speak to that?
I think it will do an or, like it will look for, hold on, let me double check. Logan, you might want to answer this one.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's going to do a full text string search. So if you type in 2 words, it's going to look for an exact match of those 2 words. It's better to do 2 different searches with 2 separate words if you're looking for multiple words. Yeah. Let's see. I did want to mention one thing that I know we're almost out of time, but I think that we had some questions that I really couldn't answer in specific, but I wanted to answer generally. I mean, Amy Lowe was really the kind of, our Civic Digital Fellow was the genesis of this idea. I think inside the internal census, we're kind of in the weeds. We're not kind of in the weeds. We're very much in the weeds. You can imagine with 100+ products that, you know, you can tend to see a lot. You're seeing a lot of weeds right there, and it just gets deeper. So Amy really recognized very, very quickly that we had a discovery problem, and this tool is really, you know, meant to sort of address that higher level, someone who's not in the weeds, like where do I even get started? Questions. That's kind of, and we have many tools that you can dig in deeper once you know where to get started. The getting started problem, just this is surprisingly the first product that we really have dedicated to that problem. So kudos to Amy on that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Logan.
Maynard Clark, how do Wikipedians use ACS and other census data for making status and dynamic charts for gathering data? I think that's a really interesting question, and I want to make sure you are aware of our Slack channel for developers, where you can get a lot of information. And Logan, would you post a link to the Slack channel for developers for Maynard in there? It's at 1:50 p.m. I don't know if they're still with us, but that's a great place, and certainly you know, Wikipedia and using census data in Wikipedia is like a noble endeavor.
You said 150?
Yeah.
The Wikipedians thing?
Yeah. And then I had a couple of questions. How do I get in touch with you? So I threw up the get in touch with us slide for you. It has Logan and I. Amy is not an employee with Census anymore, but she has joined us graciously for this panel, so we're not putting up her contact information. Yeah, but please feel free to contact Logan and I, and again, the Ask Data line for tool questions. And thanks for all the kudos. I appreciate that. Please take a minute to fill out our evaluation. The link will be posted for you all. And we've done our best to try to get to as many questions as we could. It was a very active Q&A, a lot of questions being posed, and we did our best to get to as many of them as we could. I did see some specific questions on, is there data on certain topics? And so I'm definitely going to record this chat, make sure I go through, see if there's any topics that we need to add in the future. But I think one person asked about adoption. I would actually just go to look at the topics and see what comes closest to what you need. So if we don't have something that granular or variable that you're looking for, you just bump it up to the next level. So like if you're looking for, somebody mentioned fosters or adoption, I believe, so you could go to children, right? If we don't have anything at that granular level, I'd have to go into the tool and look and see, but you definitely can select up and then start looking at those surveys to see if any of them would fit your needs.
Time pressures, since a bowl can be made in seconds in the microwave. Oatmeal and other cereal uses of oats are a substantial part of America's breakfast food industry, which
Thank you. Okay, well, again, thanks again for joining us today. We appreciate you. And again, share the data gems, share the tool with your peers. We hope that you like it and it helps save you some time in your research process.
That concludes today's conference. Thank you for participating. You may disconnect at this time.